Hello. Officially, this is the Security Working Group update. I'm Atanasova, software engineer at VMware, and I'm going to present with Julius von Kohout, who is a freelancer and a DHL employee, also a long-term contributor and the founder of a Kubeflow Security Working Group.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's start with our agenda for today. First, we will introduce our newly formed security working group, including its goals and main initiatives. And then we will highlight what we have achieved since our KubeCon presentation in April, especially network-related stuff. And we will follow up with a discussion of various Kubeflow security issues. And after this is done, we will make a direct comparison of 1.7 and 1.8 regarding the security state. So this is our agenda for today. Let's get over to Diana.
And let's get started with a brief introduction of the newly formed Security Working Group. One of the very first goals of this group is to define clear policies and procedures on how to report and disclosure vulnerabilities. Another goal is to embrace the use of security best practices across all working groups. We also provide a place for discussions in Slack and during our bi-weekly meetings. And of course, the main goal of this working group is to solve security-related issues.
Now, due to the CNCF migration that just happened a few months ago, there are now new security requirements enforced on the projects due to the CNCF participation. I checked them. They are linked here, and we are mostly missing formal stuff, such as linting, formatting code, and manifests, as well as some improvements of the formal vulnerability disclosure process. But these are quite simple formal issues, and the big elephant in the room is the missing multi-tenancy support within Kubeflow pipelines. I think this is the largest issue regarding security within Kubeflow. The problem is that they are this includes all storage systems such as object storage, metadata storage, and some databases. They are just not isolated per user, which is a severe problem for enterprise customers. And this is something we really have to work on in the future. Then there's a secondary issue that is regarding denial of service. It's about quite inefficiently written SQL queries that allow denial of service attacks, and of course significantly worsen the customer experience, because if you have to wait a few minutes until you can list your runs on quite large instances of Kubeflow, that is not looking good. And last but not least, we also have to work on automating our CVE and dependency scanning. So these are the main issues: multi-tenancy, denial of service, and CVE scanning.
And as we mentioned CVE scanning, we have written a script that extracts all the images per working group. So now we can work to list CVEs per working group and automate the scanning process. Furthermore, Canonical proposed to rebase the most OCI images on Ubuntu and offer supports to migrate the images, provide timely security patches at OS level. Also, we can join forces together to chisel images to reduce their size. So please feel free to add your comments about rebasing Q4 images on Ubuntu in the issue, which is still open.
And now regarding authentication, there are quite some changes, as probably also shown today by Christoph Romanov. We will switch the authentication method from our DC auth service to auth2 in 1.9. And a preview of that is already available on 1.8, as explained by Christoph, so please try it out. We welcome your feedback. And as Christoph said, this also includes replacing the envoy filter, making sure that the industry standard Java Web Tokens is used everywhere, and so on. And of course, this is not just for human session authentication, but also machine-to-machine authentication, which was first introduced in Kubeflow 1.7. So just take a look. That's the original workflow diagram regarding authentication. please try it out. It's really amazing. And of course, never ever use human session for machine-to-machine authentication. So looking forward to this. Now regarding the second network topic, Istio and network policies. At the security working group, we still find and fix the occasional Istio misconfiguration. It still happens. For example, a recent one allowed hijacking other users' notebooks, and therefore the whole namespace, because, of course, as you probably know, the notebooks run as the default editor, and as soon as you hijack a notebook, you hijack the whole namespace. And the second thing is that, sadly, the network policies, as a second layer of defense, are still not enabled by default. But at least you can enable them manually and support our effort to set them by default. And furthermore, we still have a severe root problem regarding many containers, especially Istio init containers. And to make this even worse, they are also exploitable in user-controlled namespaces. As you probably know, root containers are always dangerous. And to solve this problem, we now offer a 99% rootless Istio CNI, which is a different flavor of Istio, as preview in 1.8. Also there, please try it out. We need your feedback to make it at some point the default, and also check out the Istio ambient service mesh in the future. And after this is implemented, we will put on top of this hot security standards, and step by step enable warnings and enforcements regarding dangerous containers. Yeah, and as a side note, for advanced users, you should make sure to not use something insecure such as Docker and Docker for building OCI images. Because that leads privileged containers and immediately compromise the whole Kubernetes cluster. So this will not be possible at some point in the future, and you will have to migrate to at least Podman or maybe BuildKit. And actually, it's doable with BuildKit to build with unprivileged and rootless containers. Yeah, so we made some progress, slight limitations in the future, but you shouldn't worry that much about it.
And now let's talk a bit about Q4 pipeline backend. In 1.7, there are 4 endpoints that were missing authorization and authentication logic. These endpoints are for, can you press enter, Julius?
Yeah.
These endpoints are for reporting workflow results, reading artifacts, and report metrics. So the problem was that any user was able to access these endpoints. In 1.8, we secured these endpoints, so there is no more unprotected endpoints. But this enforced the only legitimate client to these 4 endpoints, the persistent agent, to authenticate itself. So now the persistent agent authenticates itself via service account token according to Kubernetes best practices for service-to-service communication. And another problem we would like to point out is that 2 of the Q4 pipeline API endpoints, archive experiment and list runs, perform poorly on large databases. So when these endpoints are called, the database remains locked for a long time, which fails all subsequent user requests against Q4 pipeline API. And this kind of inefficient request poors user experience, but also can be used for sabotaging and blocking other users. So in 1.8, we optimized the archive experiment call by replacing nested subqueries with update joins, but still list run is very slow, and we're looking for volunteers to fix this.
Yeah, I'm now going to show you a reduced architectural recap from the slides at KubeCon, and I will only briefly cover the high-level blocks to help you understand the follow-up slides. There's the yellow authentication authorization part, including the Istio service mesh, and in general, Istio and certificate manager is used throughout the project. And from the user side, I'm only going to show in one namespace here, there's usually one Kubernetes namespace per user, department, working group, whatever. And it's managed by the profile controllers in red here. Then there's the gray central dashboard, which you've probably all seen at some point in time, which bundles all of the UIs from various components. For example, the volumes UI in gray, in blue, the Kubeflow pipelines, as well as K2 Piper parameter tuning in green, and in orange, the self-service notebooks or workbenches. Yeah, and for model serving, of course, Kserve. So this is the ground overview. Usually you have multiple users and multiple namespaces. And this brings us to the next problem, which is about namespace sharing. These slides here are from our KubeCon presentation. I will just give you the high-level detail. And this is, yeah. So for today, the short summary is the following. As of now, in Kubeflow 1.8, you can still exploit namespace sharing and hijack other namespaces if you have been added once as collaborator. And in some cases, even after leaving a company, which is, yeah, quite dangerous. There are some workarounds, but we're definitely looking for volunteers to properly fix this issue in the future. And this brings us to the second big multi-tenancy problem, which is about the artifact storage for Kubeflow pipelines. My short summary for you today is the following. Even in Kubeflow 1.8, all users share the MinIO admin secret and therefore all artifacts. That means there is zero user isolation and you can mess with other people's pipelines, artifacts, whatever. I have a POC ready to isolate the artifacts per user with separate credentials, per namespace, separate folders on MinIO, and so on. But it is not yet much because it only works on premises, and people also expect to have it working with AWS and on Google Cloud as well. So this is the limitation so far. This is one big issue, no multi-tenancy for artifact storage, and also our MinIO image is probably 3 or 4 years old because of the switch to the AGPL license. So probably it also has a lot of CVEs. And then let's get to the last big multi-tenancy problem, which is the artifact metadata for Kubeflow pipelines. That is the metadata storage used by Kubeflow pipelines to store metadata about the pipeline steps, where the artifacts are located, and so on. And here the main takeaways are quite similar. There's again zero multi-tenancy support or user isolation. And as a workaround at the moment, we can disable the insecure metadata if you only use Kubeflow pipelines version 1. But the problem is that with KFP version 2, it seems to be mandatory to use ML metadata. So in the future, we need to make it multi-tenant capable, and we are, of course, as always, looking for volunteers to help. This is also being discussed with Google, but so far we have not yet come to a proper solution.
Now let's take a look at another problem, which has been also presented at KubeCon and later extended by an independent MLSecOps blog post. The cross-site scripting issue is actively being worked on by Google, but the namespace parameter is still exploitable and mostly orthogonal to the missing multi-tenancy for artifact storage. This image here shows Bob S3 artifact produced by a pipeline run. Unfortunately, the Kubeflow pipeline user interface allows Alice, another user, to read Bob's artifact's content. How? If Alice spies the S3 artifact location from Bob, as seen at the bottom of the image, she can just remove the YAML namespace parameter, and the user interface server will skip permission checks. So the user still needs to know the S3 or GCS path, for example, which can be grabbed from a non-disabled ML metadata. But there is also a general technical depth, like UI, the user interface server skips the protected Kubeflow API server and instead access MinIO directly. And the artifact proxy in the user namespace as seen on the previous slides, is rather obsolete. Removing the artifact proxy from the user namespace will also reduce resource consumption and will decrease the attack surface. So fixing all these will also require some efforts. There are some efforts that are currently ongoing, but still not committed upstream.
So to sum up our presentation, let's compare 1.7 and 1.8 regarding the security state. In 1.7, most API calls are already authenticated, and we have lower privilege RBAC, the security working group, CV image scanning, although not yet fully automated, authentication via service account, Istio improvements and security fixes, as well as the optional network policies. But there are also a lot of outstanding issues, as you can see on the right-hand side. So, the main improvements in 1.8 are that rootless containers, software bill of materials, and secure base images, the Kubeflow pipelines UI cross-site scripting and impersonation issue just explained by Diana, and the denial of service attacks are being actively worked on or are already partially solved as shown before. But the three big multi-tenancy problems regarding multi-user namespace sharing, the artifact storage, and ML metadata are still pending. They have not yet been touched. And plus, there are some profile controller RBAC issues. But all in all, we're making significant progress, especially regarding running Kubeflow rootless. And there are a lot of companies involved that are helping us as well.
And that was the security working group update. On this slide, you can find links to the Slack channel, as well as a link to our meeting minutes. We welcome new contributors and we are offering mentorships. So feel free to reach out to us and join. Please also check out our KubeCon presentation, but that provides a bit more details. Thank you for your attention.